Hi, friends. Welcome to Luminous Human School. I'm Christy Sandino, and I'm here with Lindsay Davis. Today, we have a guest who truly embodies health, resilience, and living life to the fullest. Joining us is Jonathan Tann. Jonathan is the co-founder of Ice Life Wellness and Cut the Bullshit, alongside his great friend Dean. Jonathan is passionate about helping people discover their best selves and live with more intention. He spent nearly 4 decades in the corporate world, rising through the ranks from a shop floor engineer to managing director. He then recreated himself and is now a qualified NLP practitioner, cold water therapist, breathwork facilitator, and nutritionist.
From cold therapy to grounding in nature, running, nutrition, and of course, breathwork, he's committed to practices that bring the mind and body into harmony. Through his 30-day Cut the Bullshit program, Jonathan guides people to cut through the limiting beliefs and patterns that keep them stuck so they can step into the best versions of themselves. It's an honor to have him on the show today, and we're excited to dive into his journey and the wisdom he brings to the table. So let's get into it.
Hi, Jonathan. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And we are so happy that we get to spend this time with you.
Yeah.
And I think that we'll just jump right in. So we know that you had a very successful corporate life, and we're fully living in that corporate world. And now you are fully ensconced in the healing world and offering beautiful events and healing sessions for people, which from the outside can look like a huge life transition. So I would love to just start off by asking what was happening inside you that made you feel like you were ready for a big change? And how did you start taking steps to move from these two seemingly oppositional worlds?
Okay, well, thank you, Christy. So that's a nice, light-hearted question to begin with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Of course, that's how we do it.
So let's dive in there. So yeah, I've been. I started work when I was young, 16 years old, and I was very that sort of corporate person. Really, I was went as a boy, as an apprentice, and I aspired to become a director of the company, which I duly did. And I think through each period of that progression, I guess that a lot of this is in hindsight. I realized I was being driven by, a very much of I'm not enough. And it was something this didn't come to me until, I started to reflect on it. So it was like, I can do that. I'm good enough, and if you can do it, I can do it, and I can do it better. So it was very this sort of driven, you know, and in some ways it's instilled in the corporate world. It's like the dog eat dog world, we're sometimes called, and it's about climbing this, whatever you call it, a slippery pole. It's climbing this pyramid, and yeah, it's quite ruthless and quite brutal. And I think that what I realized was that although I was progressing, there was a growing part of me that was feeling discontented, and I just felt, each time I progressed, there was some form of internal fallout from it. It felt like a part of my soul was dying, and I can remember it. The most poignant was when I reached the pinnacle in terms of this accolade of a director, and You know, I'd gone from earning in the UK terms, a dollar an hour to earning $1 million. And I think when I hit that pinnacle, I felt the most dreadful I'd felt in my life as well. So I was realised that, hold on, what's this feeling? You know, I'm feeling awful on the inside, yet on the outside, everyone's looking at something amazing, you know, all of this.
Yeah.
Do you think that there was part of you that felt like as you accomplished each level on this corporate ladder, that when you got to the pinnacle, that uncomfortable feeling within would go away? That corporate success was the solution, or was it something else?
I think, Christy, I don't even think I was mindful or consciously aware of that, the feeling side. I was just so into the doing. It was like, I do. It was more, I don't know how to describe it really. It was like I pushed all of the emotion to one side. It's like a ruthlessness I became, and like this, just get the job done, feelings, you know, I wasn't even aware of them, you know.
Wow.
It was probably coming out in ways that, you know, my stomach or my skin or things that, again, you would be like in that corporate world where you just go get some medication, don't you? Have some, you know, everyone has irritable bowel syndrome in the corporate world, you know, just get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't notice like those things, those symptoms that come up. We become so disconnected from what's really happening in our body because we're just so in the head and in the mind of like, got to do this, got to do that. We never take the time to like drop into really the present moment and really like internally to ourselves. And it sounds like that's kind of like where you were, that it was just like, what's the next task? Got to get that done. What's the next thing I have to do? And, you know, didn't even have a moment to drop into yourself, or maybe didn't even know how.
Yeah, I think that's a really good thing of, I didn't know the how. And although I would always been a sports person all my life, I'd always found, you know, my peace was always in some form of sport, be it running, be it, I was an Ashtangi for 7 years, which was again a very weird thing. I'd gone from being a runner, a bodybuilder, a drug-free one, I'll have you know. And then I got into Ashtanga yoga, which was a sort of bit woo-woo, if you like, from the world I'd been in. It was like bodybuilding to yoga, isn't it? Yeah. And, you know, I remember showing up there and I was the only guy in the class, and I'm looking at all these bendy people in there, but I did have this, I guess, a strength within me that I was always prepared to be different, you know. So I was fine, like breaking away, if you like. So although there was the corporate world, and most people in that corporate world were socializing through alcohol and through social gatherings, I was always happy to be the odd one out, the weird one who was, I'm going to the gym, I'm going to go do my yoga. So like reflecting on it, I think it was some gift I must have received from my parents.
Definitely.
What was the impulse to go to Ashtanga yoga? Was that the first kind of foray into something a little bit in the spiritual or healing world?
Yeah, I just saw this guy, and if you think of like bodybuilding, and that's very robotic. And I think, you know, and I was in the corporate world, which is very robotic. You can imagine everyone's going to the office. You can imagine it's just like everyone's in lines. And it's the first time I saw something, and it was flow. That's how I describe it. I saw this guy and thought, wow, what's this guy doing? It's like something from like a Bruce Lee movie or something. And I was just fascinated. And I went over to the guy and I just said, and his name Michael, and he's become a very good friend of mine. I was like, hey, what's that stuff you're doing? And he's like, I didn't even know yoga, or it was nowhere on my remit. And he's like, hey, it's a form of yoga. And it's like, why don't you drop into one of the classes? And that's how it began.
Amazing.
Nice. I love that. Yeah. So then, after you kind of like got to that point of, in the corporate world, and you're feeling that like turmoil inside of you, or that uncomfortable, whatever, pulling of your soul, like what did you do? Like, how did you then transition into the world you're in now? And I know that's a long process to where you are now, but was there one specific thing that like caught your attention? You're like, okay, I'm going to try that, and kind of woke you up to something beyond the state you had been in?
Yeah, so I think what happened for me, I mean, this is like in the UK, the COVID thing came along, and
Yeah.
that had a massive impact on me in terms of I'd almost stopped the job I was doing. So I'd gone from being an operations director to I used to do a company turnarounds, failing businesses. It'd come to a natural end right before COVID. So in the UK, I think it came really into play in March of that, 2022, I think it was. And it happened that in December, I'd shut down this business, in a good way. We managed to get everyone new jobs and redeployed. So I thought, the job's done. And then all of a sudden, it coincided with my beautiful two boys. So I've got Max and Harry, who Lindsay knows and has met.
Yeah.
So Max is 30 now, Harry's 20. I'll get it right or wrong, 26, I'm going to say. Stacey will tell me if that's wrong. So, they've both gone to uni and working in the city of London, and they'd left home. So I had all of these things happened at once where, I was out the corporate world, good or bad, but I'd lost that social connection. I'd lost my hero status, and I realised again from doing a lot of the work, JT was, hero. I was the superhero. Okay, so superhero JT's now gone. Superhero dad's not required anymore because Max and Harry had gone to uni.
Yeah.
And I was there of 50. I was 56 at the time, and I felt like, I don't know what the word is, I felt like worthless or no purpose. So I went to see my GP. He was a friend of mine, the doctor, and he was like, well, what do you want from me? And I'm like, I don't know. I hadn't experienced the healing world. All I knew, what did he know? He knew how to give me some medication, and you're talking to a person who probably, I don't think I've took a paracetamol in my life, so it was like, what are you saying? What are you going to give me? A pill or something? And he's like, well, yeah, these are these SSRIs. And I was like, I'm like, now I was super scared, I was like, hold on, I've got stuff going on in me. I'm now going to the trusted person, which is my doctor, and he doesn't know what to do. And then it was like, for those people listening that have been to call it dark place, I went to a very dark place. I was scared, I was frightened. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know who to trust anymore. My wife Tracy, she didn't know. My boys didn't know what to say. We're like, Dad, you'll be okay. And I somehow, through whatever, I just, I took a trip down to Glastonbury. I just happened to be, we had a little van. We took a trip down to Glastonbury. Tracy was with me. We had a little puppy dog. And we went into there's a famous shop there called Star Child. I think, Lindsay, you've been in there, and
Yeah,
they
super
sell
cool shop.
incense and everything. And I just happened to be in there, and I think Coda was the center of attraction. And I met this lady in there called Faye, and she was like talking away, and she said, "Oh, have you ever heard of breath work?" Like, what? What breath work? What's that? And she gave me a little link to do an online breath work, and I did it. And I did it on my bedroom floor, and I think it was Lindsay. It was either you, Lindsay, or it was Christy. Get it the wrong way, right way round.
Love it.
And there was someone, again, and these are all terms that in a corporate world, holding space or setting, these were all new terminologies for me. And now there was there was a beautiful pair of eyes and a beautiful presence, and I was guided into this, what I know now as a breath work. And I've never felt anything like it before. And you can't describe a feeling. In some ways it's a feeling like I've never felt. It was, like you have that, you feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It was like, I felt electrified. I felt like a warmth, a numb. I don't know how to fully describe it, really.
You really can't, right?
Yeah.
You
It's
feel
definitely
like,
something to be experienced. Yeah.
do you feel like that was one of the first moments where you started becoming connected to your body and your emotions? As you said before, that wasn't really a thought to you.
So I feel what happened, I did that one, and I felt this tingling and sensations, and then I did the second one, okay, and I think that it was either with you, Christy, or Lindsay, whatever way around. So I had one, then the following Sunday I did the next, and then I was like, right, what is this? And weirdly, this thing then came through saying there's a breath camp, a 9-day breath camp in the UK at some location down in the southwest of the UK. And you know what? I just went, I'm just doing it. I'm just enrolling, and I'll press the button. And 4 days later, I was at a breath camp.
Wow.
Taking a deep dive. Like you went straight in. I think it's so cool that your first two experiences were with both like Christy and myself guiding you. And now here we are, like friends, and having like experienced a breath camp in Italy all together. And I love that part of the story. And just how willing you were to, have this experience and kind of be like, what is this? Like, okay, I've never experienced anything like this before. And then boom, you're at a breath camp and you're like, let's go. Like, let's dive in. And you did.
And I did, yeah. And it felt like, there's a guy at the corporate world, and I'm thinking, who are all these weirdos there, me being one of them. And I hadn't realised that when I'd gone to the breath camp, there was only 3 of us who were newbies. Everyone else was graduating to be a breath worker. So I'd gone in there into this space, and there was a lady, Simona. You guys know Simona, and she was. They were doing some like inner child work and this inner child stuff, and all of a sudden I was doing a breath work and then doing some of this tuition, if you like, coaching. It was like, wow, that's me. Everything was like, that's me. That's the drama triangle. That's me. The victim, that's me. The superhero, that's me. The persecutor, that's me. So I was in there, and all of this stuff was just, this book's been written for me. not only have I been in the matrix, I've been stuck in this drama triangle.
Yeah.
And then we were then doing 2 of these, what I know are now called conscious connected breath works. I just didn't, all I was lay down, breathe in this way, and what will happen will happen.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I cried my eyes out.
Hear it.
Yeah. And I hadn't cried, you know, maybe this is the masculine or the way I've been brought up. I hadn't cried for 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to. I didn't know how to.
Yeah.
And the breath just kind of, that's what's so incredible about breath work, is it lets you kind of step outside of that, the overthinking mind and all the doing and the having to be this and put on this mask and all of that, and you just drop into a different space that allows all this stuff to start like coming to the surface, to be felt and to be seen. And I know for a lot of people that can feel like overwhelming, especially if, you know, they haven't cried in 40 years or they've never taken the time to feel in that way or really didn't know how. And so like when you were there and you were finally like feeling all this stuff come through, what was that like for you? Were you able to like manage it or integrate it? And like, how did you handle so much just wanting to arise in you at that time?
I think I felt really, it just, again, it felt very safe, you know, the way that space was set up. I'd gone in there, and it was very, you know, these are some of this terminology now, it's almost come, you know, we talk about being held and feeling safe. I mean, I didn't know what those terms meant at the time. All I knew is I went in, and either consciously or subconsciously, I felt safe to express myself.
Yeah.
And, you know, what came up was there was nothing in me. It was like, I can't let this out. I mean, there were people in there groaning, moaning. It didn't sound like a human or an animal. It sounded like something in between. There were people say, well, who goes to these breath camps? That's what people have said to me. And I said, people just like me and people just like you. Yeah. And there were people that were psychotherapists. There was a person turned up with bare feet. That's me now, by the way. That's another thing. Yep. There was you'd call it like a surfer dude in his camper van. There was people that were healers, and there was just this mix of human beings, you know, in the room. Yeah. And I had this massive thing and that's where the Jonathan had come from. So I discovered Jonathan, which was my buried inner child. It came out in a breath work. No like idea of what happened. I just knew I was breathing away, doing this conscious connected breathing, and then I just had my hand literally, you can imagine like a child. Maybe I had this analogy like I was a child holding on to their mother or something, and I literally, my hand was as if I was possessed or something. It was shaking, and I was like, don't let me go, I'm not ready to let go. And I'm very, very, the words were very, you know, poignant, and I was like, don't let me go. And I then had this profound thing of Jonathan, and we had they do these things, they call them a group share at the end. You know, did you feel like you wanted to express yourself? And it took me about 10 minutes to say, because I was crying so much. Yeah. And I said, I want you to know that I found Jonathan. And I'd never used Jonathan for, you know, because when I'd gone to school, I became John, because Jonathan was too the feminine, it was too soft, it was you know, I went to a school where Jonathan was his name. No one's called Jonathan. You called John. You know, you've got to man up a little bit. So Jonathan got abandoned, and he'd already been abandoned as well. So what happened was that was the liberation, and then it was from then everyone called me Jonathan again, and it felt beautiful. And yeah,
That's so beautiful.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, I got goosebumps as you're
Mhm.
sharing that.
yeah,
That's a pretty incredible transformation in a really short amount of time,
Yeah.
yeah,
which is, I think, a testament to what can happen in people's lives when they follow those impulses. Like you followed an impulse to go to Glastonbury and
mm,
followed this impulse to try something new when this woman suggested it, and then followed the impulse again to sign on to this breath camp. And just that short series of trusting that inner impulse really seems to have set your life into a completely new timeline.
yeah. That's true. That's a great way of putting it, Christy. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that it's only in probably in hindsight that you can, you know, you see it like that. And I remember at the time, I mean, I came back from the breath camp, you know, I'd been away now from the home for 9 days, and I come back, and it was like I'd changed.
Mhm.
That's,
Yeah.
you know, my jigsaw piece had changed. It come out the puzzle, came back, it didn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
So I'd made the change, but then the people around me, and I found that was probably the hardest thing, was then coming back, because I've
Yes.
now been called, you know, you're a weirdo. You've joined a cult. You know,
Mm.
this was everything from Tracy, my boys. You know, my parents are both still alive. People around me say, yeah, Jonathan's gone weird, man. What's happened to him?
Yeah.
And you know, you then have that again. It's, you need to call on that inner strength to say, like, you're either going to now go back and morph into the same jigsaw puzzle piece, and you say, okay, it was a great experience, I'm now fitting in again. But
Yes.
I felt overwhelmingly compelled to, like, this is me. You know, it was like the Greatest Showman. You know, that great song in there, and it's like, no, this is me. This is expression of myself. This is who I am. You know, it was what I would call my divine feminine in me that was never allowed to come out. You know, a boy growing up in the 1960s. You know, men were suck it up. A woman was not allowed to be emotional. She was like, you're over emotional and you can't show any emotion. So
Yeah.
we had this sort of two messed up models that everyone was trying to work towards. And I was like, this is me. I'm vulnerable. I'm scared. I'm okay. I'm
Yeah.
Jonathan. All's good. And then it took and it was funny. I met a guy, a friend who became a good friend of mine, Dean, who we started Ice Life Wellness off with. And he just kept saying to me, like, just stay on your path, brother. This is the word, stay on your path, and you'll find that others will start to, you know, they'll start to change around you. So don't revert back, you stay on the path. And I kept, okay, this is getting more and more difficult. And weirdly, things started to happen. I can't explain them. My dad changed towards me in a positive way. My mum started to show love that she hadn't been able to show me. You know, my Max and Harry had gone from being, Dad, you're weird, to, Dad, what's that thing you're doing, to they've come to the events now and brought their girlfriends. And
Yeah. I love that. That's incredible. I didn't realize they like had started coming to the events and yeah, it's so interesting the way when we stay true to our path that things do start to shift around us. And it's like it's such a testament to that idea. Is like, it is so easy sometimes to go like, oh, there's all these people coming at me and saying like, I have changed and I'm weird. And it would be so much easier for me to just fall back into the person they expect me to be, but staying true to like that deep yearning inside of you to be Jonathan, to nurture that side of you that you felt maybe a sense of freedom and connection to. And then like now, as you stay true to that, it's like people do start to shift. And, sometimes people can do that. It might take a little bit longer than others, and that's okay. And there's a level of patience and understanding that has to come from us as well while we, are in that transition together. And yeah, it's so beautiful that you were able to really stay true to that and stay on this path. And now you've gone through the breathwork training yourself and have created a whole business around it. Do you want to talk a little bit about like that, the business side of it, the transition of like what you wanted to share with people through your own transformation and the powerful change that you've been through?
Yeah, sure. So again, I met Dean, and Lindsay and Christy, Dean as well. So he's someone I met through breath camp, and we both had this affinity towards cold, the cold ice baths as well. And I think back in them days, very inspired by them, Wim Hof, and before it became very sort of more widespread. This was when it was very in its grassroots. So there was three of us at breath camp, and we were diving in a freezing cold swimming pool in the southwest of England, and we were like, what are we all doing? Oh, we had this thing about the cold therapy, and we knew how profound the cold was and how that can shift us cognitively. And we know now, I'm a big, I listen to the Huberman Lab and to Gary Brecker and a lot of, Dr. Joe Dispenza and all of these different people. And you get to understand now about the science of it all. So you were just doing something that you felt, I feel amazing. And then that starts to get reinforced with the science and says, oh, you're creating this beautiful dopamine, this serotonin, oxytocin, endorphins, epinephrine, and all of these things. And you're like, oh, wow, that's why I'm feeling so amazing.
Yeah.
And so we had this thing and said, well, there's something about the cold and there's something about this amazing breath work. And we know that if you dovetail them, if you combine them, you appear to get an extra effect. So the cold for me is something that when you go into the cold, you can talk about all of the different epinephrines and stuff, but it gives you presence, because when you go into something cold, the procrastinating, the thought evaporates because it's cold, right? It's super cold.
Oh, yeah.
And I hear some of the things, some of the guys are talking, and you have a different temperature gauge to the UK. We talk centigrade, you're Fahrenheit. So I'm talking 3 degrees, you're talking 36 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's cold, right?
Very.
So cool. Yeah. So
and when you're getting in there, and Lindsay, you've done ice baths with me, and you know what it's like. There is nowhere to go. There is nothing to think about other than in this moment. And it's liberating. And I've seen the same impact on someone going into an ice bath in 4 minutes as I've seen in a 40-minute breath work. I've seen a switch. I can guarantee it. I could take 10 people, I could look at them now, and I'll tell you 5 of those people, there'll be a light switch moment. It will trigger something in the brain to find a new pathway. And it will happen is like if you stay with it, if you trust your breath, and this is where the breath and the ice therapy are so poignant. Going into the cold is all about the breath control. Okay, the activation is what's going to happen when you first get into there. You get the self-governance, and then you're going to bring that down into your parasympathetic nervous system. And if you can just stay with it, something magic happens around 1.5 to 2 minutes in. You stay, you go into that feeling, rather than, I've seen people come in, they get out, you go in, you go through it.
Yep.
And there is just love and beauty and
And you feel that practice then translates out into life, something about being able to stay in challenges or discomfort and move through.
100% do, Christy. So I think that I use the cold as a metaphor, really, is exactly that. It's like, look, there's the egoic, we see it on the YouTube and everything. Oh, look at me, I'm getting in a 30-degree ice bath. I'm not interested in that. What I'm interested in is that represents something, a fear, something to overcome. You have, and we all have in us, courage that we've never tapped into, strength that we never knew we had. And we know that if we can call on that, we can go into it with a breath. We realize how powerful and how strong we really are. And I even find now it's just like, it makes me cry. It makes me, I did an event at the weekend just to do what I call a coffee plunge. And I had 6 newbies come along, and every one of those people, they got to that 2 minutes, and it was the tears and everything, and that turned to laughter and joy and love and liberation.
Wow.
It really is incredible, and I'm someone that, Jonathan, and Christy, too, like I have a very strong aversion to the cold. I live in Florida now and I love the heat, but I was like, oh my God, am I really going to get in this cold water? Like there's ice in this water. You're telling me that says 0 degrees on or 4 degrees or whatever it was at the time.
1 degree it was, Lindsay. It was 1.
Was it the first time I did it? And you were like, you got to go under. And I went under there, and it's just, oh my gosh, it was so intense. But I was able to get control of my breath and then just settle into it. And it was really so profound. And I definitely came out of that like, oh my gosh, like I did that. I did that. I stayed in that water. And then when I was staying with you for a month, and I was like, all right, I'm going to get in this ice bath like daily, as often as possible. And I would remember feeling, that intensity, of course, when you first get in. And then about a minute later, I would feel my whole body just start to relax into it and almost just go into this like zoned out space. And I was just watching the trees and sitting in this cold water and just being okay with it.
Wow. Does a regular practice of cold plunging heal other conditions in the body beyond like what we're talking about, this internal ability to get free from limited belief systems and thoughts about the self? Are there other physical healing properties?
Yeah, so I think again, if you look at the science on it, from everything from inflammation to you're getting vasoconstriction. So although you're shutting everything down, you are actually creating more oxygen requirement to things like the brain. And you think about a sauna or something that's opening everything up and the cold's closing everything down, so you're squeezing everything, the little capillaries, veins, things within your body. So imagine for your lymphatic system, for example, you're getting up, you get out your nice warm bed, you hit something cold, you're getting all of these, the epinephrine and stuff, but you're getting the physical benefits. I've helped people. So I have a group of and they're called mummy MOT, so pre and post menopausal women. They come and it's liberated them. I've had women who had come off the patches because again, you look at some of the things like estrogen, and you look at the detoxification of that channel, and then you see what happens when you add in cold therapy. You start to clear that channel out. So I ice bath every morning. For 3 years now, the first thing I do is I get straight in that ice bath. It's a non-negotiable. I get in there, and I know that at every level. I had another lady, she's had a double mastectomy. Her oncologist said the best thing you can do or could have done is an ice bath. It's so healing for you, and it's given this lady her mojo back. She's got courage. She comes, she brings friends with her now. I don't think there's any harm you can do yourself with the cold, but again, bear in mind, cold therapy starts at 20 degrees centigrade. Okay. So 40, that's 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So you haven't got to be going in one of these 30-degree in your world baths. You've just got to get in that cold shower, just flick that to cold, take a couple of breaths in there, and start your daily practice. Start with 15 seconds. Feel good about yourself, 16 seconds, and then just make it your go-to practice. You don't need to be going hard. Fantastic. Egoic. It's just be gentle with yourself. Let go, surrender to the cold, find love, find that inner child within yourself. Go in there with intention and be kind. And I think it's a beautiful practice to have. So we've found that if you do this, and then, the breath work's another level for me, because we know with the breath work, dialing down prefrontal cortex, you're able to express it at a deeper level. But I think by doing the cold first, you open yourself up a little bit, you let go, you've gone into that place, you've surrendered to the cold. Now you come to do a beautiful breath work, you can fully surrender. There's nothing to fear. It's all good in here. Whatever we've been told, don't go in here, come out here for the answer, come to the pharmaceutical world, come and have these drugs, these pills. What we know is we just got to have that deep trust. It's all good in here. It's all good. So if we can go inside us through the breath work, through the cold, we discover the little bits of us that maybe just need to be reconnected.
I love that.
Do you have, if someone were to start doing the 15 seconds of cold in the shower each day, is there, as I've done that before, and I notice what happens is I immediately suck in my breath and kind of tighten up. And is there a breath that you recommend even in the shower to just do for those 15 seconds? Is that okay to tighten up like that, or is there something better?
Okay, I hear you. That's a great question. Thanks, Christy. So the breath I always teach people. So again, you guys are, experienced breath workers, but I guess for the person listening, it might be new to them. So the way I describe it is the in-breath is the accelerator pedal, okay, the sympathetic nervous system, and the out-breath is the brake, okay? So the longer the out-breath, the more we're putting the foot on the brake. Now, what we know is when we go in the cold, the accelerator pedal's already going to be coming down hard. So we haven't got to be thinking about the in-breath. We've got to just be thinking of the out-breath. So this is the breath that I always teach people. So we do it together. We say we're going to take a breath in together, in for 4. Slight pause. Out. In. Slight pause. So that's the breath we want to achieve when we're going into the cold. So if we can start to almost imagine now we've got the nice warm shower going and we've got our breathing in for 4, out for 8. And then we just start to tweak that cold into the cold. We don't want to go bang it to the cold. Let's say we just get a little bit uncomfortable. We go from, you know, beautifully warm to lukewarm to cool. Let's call it cool. On my shower, that would be like the 12 o'clock. That's beautiful. That's boiling hot. How I love it. Cool. And then freezing cold would be like 3 o'clock. Let's just go to the 12 o'clock. Let's just go up to the top and let's just surrender to that and go, oh, that felt a little bit uncomfortable, but I maintain my breathing with it. Okay. And then after a week or 2 weeks, if you keep showing up, it's all about consistency. Everything I've learned about healing, it's about show up for yourself every single day. And if that showing up is you got in the ice bath or your cold shower for 1 second, you still showed up. Yep. And you told something in you, I always show up. Doesn't matter how I feel, I show up for myself. And I think if you can then, you know, you'll have days where it feels, oh yeah, I feel like I've got more capacity, you know, and I can go a little bit colder. Another day you feel you need to be a bit kinder to yourself. So you adjust that intensity to suit your own, you know, your own destiny, your own what's calling within you.
I love that affirmation that even if it's just 1 second, you're always affirming, I always show up for myself. That's so loving and gentle. And I think that even in the healing world, there can be this crossover of these Western ideas of like more is better and less isn't good enough. And we can still be eating great food most days or doing wonderful practices most days. And then the moment we don't, it's an excuse to go back into punishing ourselves. And holding that affirmation of, you know, 1 second, that's what I had to give today. And I always show up for myself. Feels so good. Just hearing that, I'm like, yes.
I agree. Such a good one. Yeah, just being loving towards ourselves.
Yes.
Well, that's the way to go. Like loving while, that showing up. And it's like loving, sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to just relax and do what I want. And maybe, you know, that can turn into a sense of like laziness and not getting things done. So it's like finding that balance of like, like showing up for yourself sometimes still means doing the hard thing. You know, you know, it's not just like, oh, it's self-care day, I get to relax. Like maybe self-care day is like, I'm going to show up and I'm going to get in that cold water and I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to get to the other side. And I'm going to surrender to it, because that's what stood out to me before. It's just this aspect of, you know, tapping into that surrender of just like, okay, this is really challenging me, but I'm going to stay in it and I'm going to surrender to that process in the cold or in the breath. And on the other side of that is a lot of beauty and a lot of healing and insights and maybe some more challenges, maybe some more things that you're like, oh, wow, I need to look at that. But again, it's staying in that and going, all right, let's keep going. Like you start to build this resilience in you to be able to face like anything that life throws at you. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It's a weird, isn't it? If you think, I mean, you hear this stuff and then when you say it to yourself, you know, if you're doing the same and expecting different results, it's not going to happen, is it? So you've got to say, you know, I need to do something different. That different doesn't matter what it is. It's breaking that cycle, that pattern of, otherwise all that's happening is we're going along, what's ever happening in the mind or in the body, it's just hitting that same blockage. And what we're doing is we're finding these different ways through. And some days that's a really super cold ice bath because you went, today I really feel like I've got all this inner courage, I've got this strength. You know what, today I really feel like I want to really challenge myself. And another day It's just something very, very minute. And I learned a lot of this through breath work as well. And I think it's, again, to all the male listeners out there, sometimes soft is hard. You know, we think that we've got to, everything's extreme, isn't it? We got to go the cold, you know, we've got to go the 30-degree ice bath. And then you go to a breath work and you see, I tell you, I had the most beautiful releases when I was just like surrendering. I was really going into that baby Jonathan and thought, what does he want? He doesn't need to be come out, you know. He wants love and he wants to be cared for and held, and it's all beautiful and it's all wonderful. And I've just, you know, I've changed my practice over the time, because sometimes, you want to heal yourself. So you're like, well, I'm going to heal myself, and you're going to proper go for it. And then you went, that doesn't work. Okay, so you surrendering can be the softest breath works I've done, is where I've shed the most tears and I've felt I've had the most healing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can agree with that.
Great advice. Yes. I think Lindsay and I are both on the gentle train, feeling that so many profound shifts can happen when we allow ourselves to be really soft with ourselves. Still doing the work, but letting go of that, like I was saying before, that crossover drive that we get taught in the Western world of pushing harder is always better. And then we get into this world and realize, wow, like you just said, I can do the gentlest breath work and go into profound altered states and receive incredible inner guidance. And you have a lot of emotional release and come out of it and be really shifted, like permanently.
Yeah, and I think like the theme of a lot of these things when we do have really profound healings is it does come down to presence. It's dropping into the present moment, dropping into what is. And, when we are able to kind of do some of those more gentle breath works, we are able to remain present. And even going into altered states, we can remain present within that and really take from it, some beautiful healings and be able to integrate them rather than some of these like intense go for it, like blast yourself off. And then you're like, I don't know what happened. I think it was pretty cool, but like, I don't remember a thing. And then it's like, well, how do you then, begin to bring some of that into your life and start to transform and change. And, even with the cold, what you were saying, Jonathan, is it drops you into the present moment. Like there is nothing else to do but to be in that moment, in that cold.
100%. Yeah. And I think the thing you've touched on there, and I think Christy did as well, is this embodiment. And this was a word I never even knew what this was. And it was like, embodiment, what is that? And but what I experienced and I've seen, and I'm sure you guys have seen this in the healing world, there's people, they just keep wanting this, they want more, they get the profound experience and they want to go another level. So they need to go and do ayahuasca, which is a plant-based medicine. People think, and all they're doing is they're wanting a more of an out the head experience. But we know we got to bring it all home. And I learned this, it's all you're doing. Otherwise, you're just creating another addiction. You're saying, right, this is too intense. I want to go out there. And then you come back, and then you come back in and think, okay, what bit of me needs healing? And it's just, it all comes down to, it's just love, right? It's just love. And I think that all of the other things that I've seen in people with the corporate world, or people that I thought, I don't like you, or judgments I've made on people, all I see now is it's just love that wants to come out and doesn't know how to come out. because we've got this corporate world, and if you were seen to be caring in that corporate world, whoa. So I think what we realize is a lot of the stuff that we then identify with, the behaviors, they're not even those people wanting to behave like that. They're being conditioned. And I just think the more there are healers, the more people that have made the transition. I do corporate events occasionally, and I go in there and I turn up in my bare feet, and I have this mantra. It's called "Cut the Bullshit," and the reason we use this mantra is it's just come about from, we go in there with a head full of noise, a head full of assumptions, a head full of things, and it's like saying, what if we could just let them go? What if we could just let all of these things go and just take everything as is? And when you do a breath work, or when you experience it with other people, all you feel is love. It's the white light that you said at the beginning, Christy. It's just, there is just this light. And I remember the first time I did a breath work and I just saw this light coming in. I was like, wow, what is this? And it was amazing.
Wow. So for someone who's listening and feeling dissatisfied in their life, or like they're unhappy but don't know what to do next, would you recommend starting, like a short breathwork practice or cold plunge practice? Or what advice would you give to someone to start taking steps in the direction to connecting with what might be calling them?
That's a great question. So again, I think for doing all of this work, it's really hard, because I know that there's normally, you've got 10 things that are 1%ers, if you like, or there's 100 things in all. And one of the things I do is I do a lot of journaling. Okay, so this is a little map thing that I did when I was doing my inner work, my inner journey work. And they called free writing, and it's just, I'm sure there's lots of different iterations of it, but what I've always found is this. I found it's definitely about the breath. So it can be as much as just taking 3 breaths. It could be you're out in the woods, you're out, in your backyard. You could be just a little bit of, sitting on the sofa, stroking your dog, and you just take a little couple of breaths. And we know that even closing your eyes shifts the brain state. We know we're stuck in this beta gamma world, and just shutting the eyes, we start to shift into alpha, right? We start to shift. And it's like, what is it? What is an alpha? And people are like, well, it's just your brain is starting to shift. It's starting to come more inward. So I would just say, take a couple of breaths, throughout the day. You might just put a little something on your alarm and just say, do you know what? 2 hours from getting up, I'm going to have a little alarm go off, and I'm just going to take a breath. And just notice and just be aware of anything. Write it down. It might be, I haven't got time for this. It doesn't matter what the thing is. And you just start to create this little habit. And then the little thing, you might say, I'm going to do 3 breaths. And then before you know it, you're setting a little time aside. So my personal thing is, before I even get out of bed in the morning, I go straight into a 15-minute meditation. I just like bang, little thing with a gong chime, heart coherent breathing, 5 and 5, in for 5, out for 5. And then I'll wake up, do the breath, and then think, how do I want to feel today? And I want to feel amazing. So I set that intention, and then I go out, do my ice bath, make a beautiful breakfast, and away I go. So I think it's about set the intention, because if you wake up feeling not your best, that could be a subconscious thing that happened. It's subconscious. You just say, I feel bad, I feel rubbish. but you can change how you feel. You make that decision, you manifest it, this word. I choose to feel amazing. Yeah. And if you just make that, I am going to have the most amazing day, you know, even it doesn't mean it's going to be an easy day, but you're going to like, everything's working for me. And again, that was another big affirmation. It's like you walk in, you know, you get out the front drive, someone cuts you up, and you're like, well, how's that working for me? Okay, you can take a breath, can't you?
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden another situation comes, and maybe that's an opportunity for gratitude, or maybe that's an opportunity to give empathy. And all of a sudden you start to change the day, and you realize it was always a beautiful day. And that's just by setting that intention in the morning. So that's what I would say is like, you take control of self. Don't let the external environment determine how you're going to feel today. How do you want to be? Not what am I going to do today? How do I want to be today? I want to be amazing. I want to be full of love. I want to be sharing, caring, and shining my light, if you like. And that's the last thing I do is I put on this little thing, which you guys know, which is called this little light of mine.
Yeah.
And I just go shine your light, JT. Go shine your light, Jonathan. And that's my intention setting for the day.
I love it.
That's an incredible morning routine. I love it.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. Just, you know, what you're saying here is like, one, it's, you know, you're offering people this opportunity or this tool of journaling and kind of free writing. You mentioned those moments where you can just take a breath. I mean, anybody could do that at any time, but just this idea of how do you want to be today? Like, you get to control that part. Like, we cannot control everything that happens outside of us, but we can be like, how do I want to show up to it? You know, when those challenges come, how do I want to be? Do I want to be reactive and fight back? Or do I want to take a breath and say, hold on, let me find my center and respond to this in a way that like is coming from the best version of myself? Like, who do I want to be today? And how am I going to do that? And that's my intention, to be my best version every day I wake up.
I love that. Yeah.
Oh, shine your light.
Go shine your light.
Beautiful. Well, before we close, we would just love to ask you if there's any courses or events, programs you have coming up that you want to share about for people who are thinking, how do I work with Jonathan?
Yeah.
So I run events in the UK, and we run them a place near to my home called Chewinbury Farm. And we've got a beautiful environment. Lindsay's actually come and held space and run a breath work for me there. And it's a beautiful farm setting. It's we've got this, it's called the Picture House. It's all like oak floors, and it just, you walk in, it just smells beautiful, and it is beautiful. And we run them events normally monthly from November through to March. Now, I don't personally do breath work anymore because it's too much for me. I'm too empath, and you know, you can maybe explain more to people about that. It's very, you know, it's a beautiful thing to do, but for me personally, it's too intense for me. I can't. It comes into me. I feel all the feelings of the person.
You mean guiding it?
Yeah, guiding breath work.
Yeah.
Where I find in a group setting, I absolutely find that okay, but one-to-one, I find that quite difficult. So I've always found my thing is, I love doing my thing will be, I love the cold therapy, I love the movement, and I love being part of that whole family and that whole community of people. And I just found my little bit that I really enjoy. Okay. And that's really it for me. We do it for the love. We do the coffee plunges down at Chewinbury every weekend. So I just go down there, 6-8 people turn up, and they have an amazing experience, and they have a coffee or a cacao afterwards. And I leave that morning feeling amazing myself that I've helped a few people.
Yes.
So that's what we do, really.
That's amazing. Yeah, and
Yeah.
we'll also leave your like your Instagram and everything in our description box so people can find you or reach out to you if they have questions about those events if they happen to be in your area. So that's how, you know, people can find you on Instagram. It's Ice Life Wellness, right?
Ice Life Wellness, that's us, yeah. You might see us as the other alternative, which is the Cut the Bullshit. So,
Did you have
and
a
that's
separate
just,
Instagram handle for that?
they're all linked into the same.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
we've got one called Plunge the World as well. So they're all linked in. So the vision is that everyone around the world is doing an ice bath on a Sunday at the same time. We're going to
Love
have
it.
like 1 million people taking a plunge together. Yeah.
Ah, so
Fantastic.
good. Yeah, thank you so much, Jonathan, for being with us and talking with us today and sharing so much about your journey and like all the personal, you know, transformations that you've been through. It's really inspiring. And I feel like every time I talk to you, I'm always inspired in some way. And I'm like, yes, like even you just like I remember, you know, when I was staying with you, it's like shine your light, shine your light. And yet I'd hear that song every morning going, you know, and I was like, that's right. And it's just, it always just inspires me. And I just I appreciate you and I love you. And I'm so happy that, you know, you could be with us today and share with the world all of this beautiful stuff.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you everyone for listening. And of course, if you'd like to reach out to Jonathan, we'll have his information in the description box below. And of course, you can always reach out to us at Luminous Human School on Instagram. And we love you all so much. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. See everyone later. Bye-bye.